Let's be real. When another landlord requests a letter of reference from a previous tenant, you probably wish you could tell them no. But landlords everywhere rely on good faith of one another when requesting these letters, just like you may have done yourself. Plus, if a good tenant requests a reference letter from you and you don't write one for them, they could leave you bad reviews online, which may damage your property's credibility with potential renters moving forward. That's why when you receive requests for reference letters, the best thing to do is to write them. Pretty obvious. But if you're wondering how to do so, then we've got you covered. Keep watching to learn how to write a great tenant reference letter, and check out the description for a link to our sample template. Can we show that on screen right now? Right here? Awesome. Okay, let's start with the basics. What is a landlord reference letter anyway? Put simply, it's a document a past landlord sends to a new one to endorse a tenant. Some landlords ask for these on rental applications because they help evaluate a potential tenant in ways that go beyond standard background checks. They provide a more relevant and human perspective about what an applicant would be like as a tenant. So, now that we've covered what a landlord reference letter is, let's take a look at what yours should include. Here's a quick list of the main components that should be in your landlord reference letter. Now, this would include your basic information like your address, email, and phone number, the date of the letter, the start and end dates of the tenant's lease, a description of how the tenant was while living at your property, a closing statement, and of course, your signature. If you include each one of these things, you should never get a follow-up request for further information from the tenant. So it'll make your life way easier to include all of this in your first draft. All right, so now you know what to include in your reference letter, but how do you do it all together? Here are a few tips to help you out. The first thing you need to know is that a landlord reference letter doesn't need to be this lengthy document that's going to take the other landlord half an hour to read all the way through. It should be quick and simple. The other landlord is likely just looking for a quick endorsement of the tenant from a previous landlord and a few words about what they were like as your tenant. For example, you could answer questions like this. Did the tenant pay the rent on time? Did they take care of your property? Did they communicate effectively? Did they leave on good terms? And of course, were there any lease violations? Putting all that together looks something like this. I'm gonna use my official voice here. The tenant has always paid their rent on time and never violated their lease. They maintained the unit as expected and were easy to communicate with throughout their tenancy. I'm working on it. That short paragraph covers just about everything a potential landlord would want to know about a future tenant. Part of keeping it simple is to make sure that you only include pieces of information that are relevant in your landlord reference letter. A good rule of thumb here is to only include things in the letter if it's something that you'd want to know about. If a potential renter was going to be moving into your property and you wanted to review it as their landlord. For example, you can leave out personal information, such as whether the tenant is a friend or what you thought about them outside of your professional relationship. In fact, you actually need to be very careful about including too much information that's not directly relevant to the purpose of the letter. Divulging personal details about the tenant, such as their race or religious background, could be a violation of fair housing laws. When in doubt, leave it out. You don't want to risk any kind of legal issues, and the other landlord can always request more information from you if they really need it. Most of the time, they won't bother you since they're likely busy, just as you are. Once you've written the bulk of your reference letter, it's a good idea to wrap things up with a closing statement. This should summarize your feelings about the tenant, just in case any other part of the letter was unclear. But keep in mind, you only need a line or two for this. For example, your closing statement could be, I'm gonna do my professional voice again. I had a wonderful experience with insert tenant's name and would gladly accept them as a tenant again. Last time, I promise. If you forget to include a closing statement, you're probably still going to be fine. This is more about providing some final clarity on your endorsement of the tenant more than anything else. One last thing to note here is that if you have had a hiccup with your relationship with the tenant that was subsequently resolved, that's something you should definitely address in your closing statement. For example, if a tenant was late on rent 1 month, you could say something like this. Even though said tenant was late on rent in January, they paid the past due balance promptly and were never late again. This kind of statement shows that even though the tenant didn't have a perfect track record while living on your property, there wasn't a pattern of poor behavior, and you'd still rent to them again. Finally, one last tip just to wrap this section up. You can always use a template if you want to make the writing process easier. We've included a link to our template in the description of this video, which should work for the vast majority of landlord reference letters. All right, now let's take a look at what a good landlord reference letter might look like once you put all these tips together. Here's a quick sample to show what these look like once completed. To whom it may concern, I, Muhammad Abugosh, fully recommend, insert tenant's name here, as a tenant. As my tenant from March 15, 2018 to March 15, 2020, rent was late a total of 0 times. During that time, their monthly rent was $1,200 a month. While working with the tenant, they paid their month rent promptly and were never late. They also took care of all of their tenant responsibilities, including pet rent and parking each month on time. They maintained the property as expected and communicated promptly regarding maintenance and repair issues. I had a wonderful experience with, insert tenant's name here, on my property and would gladly accept them as a tenant again. Sign, Muhammad. So there you have it. We hope you found this video helpful if you need to write a landlord reference letter. Don't forget to download our template from the video description if you want some additional guidance. Also, consider signing up for a free demo of DoorLoop. Our all-in-one property management software stores all of this information about previous tenants automatically, so you don't have to waste time finding it the next time you need to write a landlord reference letter. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more videos just like this, and we'll see you in the next one. Until next time.